So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I really enjoyed the show, and so I'm super excited to have you on. And
Thank
so
you.
for the first part, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Garrett Forrestal. I'm currently playing Jerry Lee Lewis at the Paramount Theater's production of Million Dollar Quartet. It's at the Stope Island Theater, which is a new venue they just opened up, which is an immersive venue. So you kind of walk in and you are sort of transported to the uh, 1950s in Memphis, Tennessee, and then you see Sun Records itself, and you get to walk in the front door of the studio, walk through the office, eventually into the studio itself. And I've been running the show now over at the Paramount for a year, and we're about to go on a year and a half, but I've been doing the show for like 2 years or 3 years now.
Nice. And so for this production, what was the audition process like? Because it's a newer production with the immersive experience too. So
Yeah, so it's interesting. The this audition process is sort of unlike other typical musical theater auditions where, typically you get your agent to submit you for something and you do the initials and all of that. But because this world of Million Dollar Quartet requires actor musicians and it's such a small community that does it, oftentimes you get a direct message from connections. And so I had previously done the Million Dollar Quartet Christmas National Tour with Bill Scott Sheets, who plays Johnny Cash. And he had connected me to the Paramount because he was sort of their like veteran member and he was going to be the associate music director. So he was sort of the liaison with casting. So at that time, I was actually out in Los Angeles doing another production, and I got the email from Bill. He connected me with the Paramount. I sent in a video, um, and then they were like, "Okay, great." And the next thing you're moving out to Chicago. Because at that point, I was living in New York City, but I was out in LA, living in New York City, auditioning for something in Chicago, and then now I've moved out here and been here for a year.
that's great. And you guys recently got extended into January, so that's super
Yeah.
cool as well. So what is one of the hardest parts about doing an immersive production?
One of the hardest parts about doing an immersive production, there's a big like sort of transition from the proscenium stage, which is where I've done majority of the theater that I've done so far. There's a fourth wall, and you are trying to like send your energy essentially to the last seat of the house behind that. And so there's this different feeling where, the eyes aren't beyond a wall, the eyes are quite literally all around you. So it sort of changes the approach of like, what, where do I have to send my energy? How do I address the space and the room? But honestly, the nicest thing about it, I think it allows it to be a bit more natural than it does on a proscenium stage. You can sort of just trust that like your natural reaction to the moment and the action reads well. But it's still, there's things I learn about it still every single day doing it.
Yeah, for sure, that's great. And so when you were younger, what got you into theater?
So when I was about like 6 years old, my brother, I have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. He started he was in school in music classes, and the teacher noticed that he had a good voice, eventually called home and told my parents that you should consider giving him voice lessons of some sort. And so eventually this teacher, his name is Tom Pettis. My parents having no idea like where to look for voice teachers, how to get their kid a lesson. They basically were like, "Well, would you be willing to do this?" And so he started giving my brother voice lessons, which very quickly he took a big liking to. And I was coming around, and then eventually he's like, "Okay, we should give this kid a piano lesson." And so he started teaching me piano. And then from there, he was also very passionate about musical theater and started introducing us to shows in the area, then taking us to see Broadway shows. So I was very lucky when I was a kid to have a professor or teacher that took like a very personal interest in theater and my interest in it as well. And there's countless times he would take me on like a random school night, we would go into the city and see a Broadway show. And it's like, you know, after growing up and meeting a lot of people from all over the country that are doing musical theater, I didn't realize how lucky I was to have someone, A, that was willing to take me and pay for it,
Yeah.
but like just have access to the city. You know, there's so many legendary productions that I got to see with him. And so that was really where I started getting into theater, and then eventually doing summer theater camps and all of that. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, it's like everything I want to do and it's the people I want to be around, you know?
Yeah, that's great. And so what was your first experience with Million Dollar Quartet?
My first experience with Million Dollar Quartet actually it kind of ties into this teacher. So this teacher told me about this camp called the Paper Mill Summer Conservatory, and it's at the Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey. And it's basically a 5 week intensive where young people go and they study, you know, scene study, it's song study, all of this, dancing. And it's just to kind of spend 5 weeks in a more intense environment learning about musical theater. And we did a little showcase at the end of it. And in that showcase, I was assigned to sing Great Balls of Fire when I was 17 years old. And so at that time, I like didn't know who Jerry Lee Lewis was. I didn't know anything about Million Dollar Quartet. But this one director was like, "You should sing this song. You play piano. You'll play piano on it." And so I did that, and it was like sort of on the back burner of my mind of things to do. And then it wasn't until I graduated college and a friend of mine who was doing the Jerry Lee stuff was like, dude, you got to learn this stuff. You're going to be called in for it very soon. And so we sat down together and like went over the Jerry Lee piano parts. And then eventually uh, the audition comes around, and it was I first auditioned for the Million Dollar Quartet Christmas National Tour, and then I got in the final three uh, callback for that. And so I was like really excited, jazzed. It's like, oh man, I feel like this is gonna happen. It's gonna be me. And then they basically were like, hey, you have no experience playing the role in the actual show. Like, we need you to do that. And so then the next year, I found a production that my friend was actually producing, and I was like, please let me play Jerry Lee in this. And that one led to another one, which led to another one, which led to another one. And now it's just been like 3 years of doing Million Dollar Quartet, which is crazy.
I mean, it's easier then for you because then you don't have to like worry about forgetting lines because it's been in your life for so long.
Oh my gosh, man. There's some days where I step out there and I'm like, wait, did that scene just happen? What is going on? Like, and it's even scarier when you do forget your lines. I mean, it feels like you enter a true black hole void.
Yeah. And so what was the best piece of advice that you've ever received from another actor?
Oof, gosh, best piece of advice that I ever received from another actor. Gosh, I mean, like the greatest gift is always watching the actors that you love perform. You know, there's so much you can learn from seeing someone on stage and take little nuggets from. Um, mm, the best advice I ever received. And oftentimes it's like, you know, the people that you work with, even if no matter how much you look up to them, sometimes they just become your friend. So it's not even the things that they intend to tell you, but it's the little like nuggets that they just say in passing about, oh, I'm approaching the song like this. But specific to this show and specific to Jerry Lee Lewis, I think the best advice that I ever got was really just to like let go and get out of my head. And that, you know, there, of course, I could be hypercritical of every note that I play on the piano. I could make sure every solo is pitch perfect. But at the end of the day, it is like, can you sell it? And that's rock and roll, is just
Yeah.
giving the people something that is oozing with confidence and swagger. And so basically, one guy told me, he's like, you know what? Just stare your eyes up at the rafter and just like project to the back of the room and tell people like I know exactly what I'm freaking doing here, and people will believe it. But there's been a lot of good advice, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, What is it?
Yeah, that's great. And so, who are some of your biggest inspirations as an actor?
Oof. Biggest inspirations as an actor. Super interesting. Oh, sometimes I have like the memory of a walnut, so I like really struggle to remember the exact influences that I have. I think more than like more than specific actors, it's been a lot of teachers that have been huge influences on me. And like they recommend me to see certain things and productions, and so there's certain performances that have stood out in my mind, but like the real people that have influenced me the most have been my professors. And I had a professor, Vince Cardinal, at school, and he was like the person that really made me fall in love with like the academic side of acting and getting into the scene work and picking it apart and figuring out, how to make the most interesting choice that I can make, but also serve the scene and serve the other people on stage with me. So like that's my biggest influence as an actor. Um, I will tell you my favorite show growing up that I ever saw on Broadway, and like my voice type isn't quite this, nor am I a dancer like that. But seeing On the Town on Broadway in like it was like the 2012 to 2015, I think, production, and Tony Yazbek in that was just like unbelievable. I
Phenomenal,
saw that.
yeah.
Oh, I thought I saw that production I think like 3 or 4 times, and it was magical every single time. And I thought like as a leading man, he just knocked it out of the park. That was wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. And so, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, um, advice I would give to my younger self. I'd say like if I'm curious about something, it's not a distraction, it's a curiosity, so to explore it. I think often as a young kid, like some of my more creative outlets ended up feeling like distraction from schoolwork and things that were traditionally more important. But now I'm going on 4 years of making my career of doing creative things, playing piano. And so, really, the big thing was just like if you have a curiosity, explore it and don't be afraid to continue to explore it and like ask for help and resources. You know, if you have a unique curiosity, it's not something to hide or be ashamed of. It's what makes you unique and can lead to opportunities that you wouldn't fathom down the road. So that would be the main thing I tell myself.
Yeah, that's great. And so, this next question kind of ties into the last one, but what advice would you give to younger performers who want to pursue a career in acting?
Ooh, younger performers I want to. What age? What age are the performers, would you say?
Teenage, we'll say.
Teenage. Um, I would say just like focus. I think there's so much. We growing up in a world that has so much media and influence that it like sort of taints the purity of like what it is that we're trying to do, and like the main things that we're trying to do are tell stories and build a community. Um, so like my main thing to young performers would be to like get off the internet in some ways and like find that community, find the things that you love about performing. Um, that like it's easy to get swept up in the world of like I need more followers, I need to be doing X, Y, and Z to like make sure that I am at the top of my game. But at the end of the day, like what it boils down to, and I'm not saying this as a person that is like, starring on Broadway right now
Yeah.
or in a Marvel movie, but from like my friends that I see and like what I've experienced, the people that work and the people that are invited into the rooms are the ones that are invested in their curiosity and interested in what makes them unique and individual and aren't caught up in some of those outside factors. So it's just to sort of focus on the community, the craft, and the people.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think
That's
that'll be
great. So that actually wraps up the interview today. I'd like to thank you for joining me.